Hey YouTube, it's RCB, and today I'm going to be doing my very first movie review video. And the movie that I'm going to be reviewing today is the 14th movie I've seen this year, The Sisters Brothers. Now this film is directed by French director Jacques Audiard, and it's an indie film that focuses on the era of the gold rush in Oregon and California, and focuses on two mercenaries named Eli and Charlie Sisters. And together they form the Sisters Brothers. Now the Sisters Brothers work for a man called the Commodore. And the Commodore sends them off to kill people who have wronged him, kill people who haven't paid him. Basically they do a lot of killing. So much that the first shots you see in this movie is a shootout, which is actually gorgeously shot because it's in pitch black, and the only thing you see is the light from the guns getting fired off, and it's a really wonderfully done shot. But I digress. This movie focuses on the brothers' mission to meet up with their associate, John Morris, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who has apprehended a man named Herman Kermit Warm, played by Riz Ahmed. And Warm has invented a formula, and this formula, when you pour it into the rivers where people have been panning for gold, the gold lights up as a result of combining with the formula, and it makes it easy to pan for the gold. But it's also damaging to the human body if it's exposed for too long to this formula. So the Commodore wants this formula for himself so that he can profit off the success of Warm's invention. So he sends the brothers to rendezvous with Morris, who has captured him. But Warm ends up getting into Morris's head, and Morris decides that he is done with working for the Commodore and wants to join Warm in his business adventure of creating a better society where people don't try to wrong each other as much. It's not about killing, it's just about thriving as a community. And this is hard to do when everyone is out for themselves, especially on the West Coast when everyone's trying to get gold. And interestingly enough, this movie wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like a traditional Western where it's very much in the time, but it's more so a case study on the two brothers. And you could put this film in any time period and you'd still get, and it would be basically the same because it's about the brothers and how they interact with each other. Now, Eli Sisters is played by John C. Reilly, and Charlie Sisters is played by Joaquin Phoenix. And this movie, it goes into exploring what these brothers are like, because they're two very different brothers. Eli wants to finish this job and just have it be the last job he gets his payout from the Commodore, and he wants to go home and marry the school teacher in the city that he's from because they've taken a liking to each other, and he wants to build a life and a family with her and leave all of this behind him. And his brother Charlie, on the other hand, is very much against this. He is happy being an outlaw. He's trying to create their name as the Sisters Brothers to be a name that people fear. He's trying to build up their street cred, trying to make them the big name out that people are afraid of, to the point where he reveals to Eli that his plan the whole time has been to work up and up favor with the Commodore, to kill the Commodore to take his place. And it explores the relationship between these brothers and why they stick together if they are so drastically far away from each other throughout their entire lives. So the whole first chunk of the movie, Charlie really thinks he's calling all of the shots. And part of that he feels right too, because in a very unpleasant scene, a tarantula crawls its way into Eli's mouth while he's sleeping, and he wakes up and he is just wrecked. His face is swollen, he can't see, he doesn't feel good, and Charlie really has to look out for his brother at that point because Eli is incapable of taking care of himself, which is very opposite to the way things usually are and the way things end up, where Eli is taking care of Charlie. Because it's revealed throughout the movie that Charlie killed their father because their father was a drunk and he was abusive and he told them they were never going to amount to anything. And so Charlie killed the dad, and they ended up running away as a result of that, and that is what set them into motion of becoming the outlaws as the Sisters Brothers. Now, eventually, they decide to team up with Morris and Worm when, ironically enough, after they're captured by them, because more of the Commodore's men have pinned them down. Actually, it's not the Commodore's men, it's the men of another minor character in the movie that sends them after Worm and Morris in order to steal the formula. And they're outnumbered, so the brothers end up teaming up with them to defeat the men, and then they agree they're going to share the wealth of the gold after they pan for it with the formula. Unfortunately, things don't go as they had hoped, because when they pan for gold, they're having all this success and they're panning for it, but they're also burning themselves because the chemicals are interacting with their skin once they're in the water panning for the gold, and they got to wash themselves off, otherwise they will suffer longer injuries. And Charlie gets carried away with this and ends up trying to pour more of the formula into the water, and in doing so it unintentionally pours it onto his arm and pours it into the river, and it covers Morris and Worm to the point where they aren't able to move. Worm is actually blinded by this. And so Morris ends up taking his own life rather than suffer through the pain of the chemical burns on his body, and Worm dies from the burns. And so, left with nothing, Eli has to get them out of the situation. So Eli takes his brother to a nearby city, and they have to amputate Charlie's arm off because of the acid burns. And from that point on, Charlie is entirely dependent on Eli because he can't shoot the way he used to because he lost his good arm. So he basically is reliant on Eli keeping him safe, and he has to watch the horses, he has to watch their supplies, and he feels very helpless. And then they end up going back home only to find that the Commodore is dead. So they have no obligation to the Commodore anymore, and they have no obligation to anything. And this is where it really surprised me, this movie, because they go home to their mom. And it ends with them seemingly having a pretty happy time living with their mom again and rebuilding the family that had been destroyed in Charlie's decision and their decision to become outlaws. Now, for me, the two most interesting characters in this movie are John C. Reilly as Eli's sisters and Jake Gyllenhaal as John Morris. Reilly carries this film. He also has producer credit on it. And you understand why, because he creates such an interesting character. I mean, this is probably the best thing I've seen John Reilly do in any movie. And it's because he is a man who does things out of obligation. He does them out of love for his brother. He doesn't want to be a criminal. He doesn't want to shoot people that are innocent. He doesn't want to make people's lives miserable by working for a boss that he doesn't even like. But he does it because he knows his brother will not last without him, because his brother drinks, his brother parties, his brother cannot take care of himself. And it's because something inside his brother broke after he killed their father. And so it's so sad but also interesting to watch Eli's character throughout the movie, because you see more and more the weight that it puts on him to keep sticking up for his brother. And John C. Reilly just acted the heck out of it and did a fantastic job. And Jake Gyllenhaal as John Morris is kind of along a similar line in that these two are really meant to be the sympathetic characters of the movie. Because John Morris had a horrible upbringing from his father. He fought with his father, and he became the mercenary that he was at the beginning of the film out of defiance to his father, out of trying to run away from the horrible life that he would have been forced into had he had stayed with his father. But he realizes after meeting Worm that this isn't the life that he wanted, that he's not happy, and he finds that hope of a happy life, a new existence with a good purpose in this idea, because Worm wants to go to Dallas once he refines his formula, and he wants to use the gold that he finds in California to build a society where people can get along, people don't have to fear each other, there's no fear of being shot at or anything. And it kind of seems like a bit of a far reach given that it's the Old West, but in this dream, Morris finds hope for a better life, and it's so sad to see this guy who goes from not being a really kind of miserable character to someone who has so much hope and never gets to actually find that because he's burned by the chemicals and ends up killing himself. But overall, all four of the main actors, Phoenix, Reilly, Gyllenhaal, and Ahmed, they own the movie. There is no one else that really carries the movie like those four do. And it's a strong film because they all have great chemistry with each other, and their relationships are clearly defined, and it works so well as a film. And now, from a cinematography standpoint, it's a genius film. Like I said earlier, the shots where they used the lighting of the gunshots was great, but there were also all of these weird shots that I wouldn't have never really thought would be in this film, but they work so well. Like there's a shot when they're in the river before they're about to practice the chemical trial, and the camera is underwater, and you're just looking up, seeing their feet as they're hitting the log that they're sitting on. And it just, initially I was like, why are they showing this? But it shows the tone. Everything in this movie is so cleverly and brilliantly directed, and I owe that is entirely to the director and the cinematographer for this movie. Now, given all of that, this is a good movie, but it's not quite a great movie. There is no moment where it's like, oh my gosh, this is something way out, way different than anything else we've seen. There is no moment like that. It's a simple, well-told, well-directed, well-acted story. But there is nothing that really pushes it or is a huge, like, hook about it to make it really stand as anything more than just a good film. And don't get me wrong, I would definitely recommend seeing this. It's a fantastic movie. But I would not go in with the expectation that you're seeing anything that is going to blow your mind. It's just if you enjoy Westerns, if you enjoy stories about family, go see this. You'll enjoy it. It's a great film. So, given all of that, on a scale of 1 to 5, I would give this movie 3.5 stars because it has so much good in it. But it just doesn't quite cross the threshold into being a truly great or fantastic film. Anyways, feel free to agree with me, feel free to disagree with me, comment below, and be looking for me in my next video. I should be posting that pretty soon. And until then, this has been RCB. See you later.